Good evening and welcome to this edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Thank you very much for joining us for this edition of In Focus. I have a chance in this position to speak to some very interesting people who inform me of a lot of things. And as we talk to politicians public servants, as they like to be called, and others in the area, a conversation and a topic that continues to come up is workforce development. That to me seems to be kind of a catch-all kind of phrase, but I'm going to find out because I have a chance to speak to somebody that is in that business. Mike Rao, who is president and CEO of Eastern Indiana Workforce Development Board. Is that right?
That is correct.
That's a title. You get that on a card?
Barely. Very small print.
Mike has agreed to join us. I found you really kind of on Twitter, just kind of hanging out there, and some of your tweets were interesting, and I started following, and then just kind of reached out and said, can you come enlighten me, please? And you were nice enough to agree to do that. So thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Eric.
Let's start with you for a little bit. Give us a little bit of your background. Who are you? I do that with our political leaders when they're in. Give us that 90-second spiel.
Sure. Well, I was born in Newcastle, Indiana. We migrated from community to community, including into the Western Ohio area. My father was constantly looking for work. He wound up working in Richmond for a while. We lived in Pershing, which is now known as East Germantown. And then we immigrated to Marion, Indiana, where he worked at Dana. And I wound up going to high school at Eastbrook High School, which finished second in the state in football this year.
Woohoo.
So, well, yeah, we wanted to win it, but that was close. I'm proud of those guys. So, and now I've served in law enforcement, higher education, as both an administrator and a professor, assistant professor.
Okay.
I've also served in manufacturing as a manufacturing executive of a small privately held company. Mm-hmm. And then I came to Eastern Indiana to serve as the Workforce Development Board president and CEO.
And how long have you been with Eastern Indiana? I'm not going to go there.
Eastern Indiana Works.
There you go.
Yes.
Eastern Indiana Works.
I've been with them for a little over 5 years.
Okay. We've never met before. I mean,
no, I've seen you at events, and you're working the events hard, so I never wanted to bother you, but I've seen you around at the various events in Richmond and Wayne County. And
tell us about your organization. What is it?
Well, a Workforce Development Board in Indiana is a 501c3 corporation. It's privately held by a board of directors who are appointed by the chief local elected officials. Those are the mayors and the commissioner presidents of the communities in the economic growth region, which our economic growth region is Region 6. We call it Eastern Indiana for short. And so all the mayors and the commissioner presidents from the 9 counties that we serve appoint board members after they're nominated by either a Chamber of Commerce or an economic development corporation. So we have a plethora of partners that we work with on the workforce development side. We are authorized by the federal government, an act of Congress signed by the president, and we are certified by the governor of the state of Indiana. So we're the only organization that is truly fully authorized to do workforce development in Indiana.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of people talk about it. We're the only ones that are authorized to do it. What
is your relationship with Work One?
Work One is a subsidiary of Eastern Indiana Works. We manage the Work One offices. That's one thing that we do among many. We also work with in-school and out-of-school youth, both in the Jobs for America's Graduates program and also the out-of-school youth, which goes up to the age of 24. And we work with dislocated workers, so if there's a massive layoff, you'll see us there helping the individuals who have been dislocated from their employment find sustainable, exceptional employment opportunities to go to. We also convene the chief local elected officials for ideas, and we also, I work closely with the governor's office. I work with them, I don't work for them. So typically the Indiana Department of Workforce Development is a pass-through agency that receives the funding for workforce development from the Department of Labor, and then they pass it through to the 12 workforce development boards in Indiana.
Okay. I'm going to ask what's probably a dumb question, but it'll only be the first of many during this 50 minutes or so that we're together. Can you define for me or explain to me what is workforce development? When that term is kicked out there, as the only one certified to do it, what does it mean to you?
Well, full workforce development means total employment. So everyone who is of working age and eligible for employment has a job. So that's the ultimate goal. Okay. We also focus on high wage and high demand positions, filling those positions for employers. So our board is 61% employer in terms of its makeup. Okay. So we have a lot of for instance, in Wayne County, Craig Kenyon's on our board from Reed Health Systems, and so we come together as an incubator, a think tank, or any other trendy name you want to come up with, to create high strategy that has a local impact with a eventual regional scope in terms of the strategies. So for instance, we had a recent layoff announced, so 125 people were laid off. And so we immediately implemented a rapid response in order to process those individuals that were about to lose their jobs immediately before Christmas and transition them into the openings, employment openings that exist on the high wage side, with which coincides with the high demand. So if there's a need for upskilling of those individuals, then we provide that. Okay. The employer always chooses the training provider. So for instance, if Reed Health Systems has an urgent need for RNs, for instance, with BSN, then they choose the training provider. And there are 120 certified training providers in the state of Indiana. So Reed Hospital or Health Systems would say, we choose, I'm just going to throw out an example, sure. IU East or Ball State or whoever their chosen training provider is, and then we would connect them with that training provider and then assist the individual with the pursuit of that training, assist them financially, okay. And then assure that they make proper progress, because these are federal dollars that we're expending, and that once they finish, then we actually report that back to the Indiana Department of Workforce Development and the U.S. Department of Labor.
I'm going to ask you to define something else, because I think it's not the same as it used to be, and maybe I'm wrong. Define high-wage job as it exists right now.
Sure. Right now, for an individual to break even, an individual who is on public assistance, okay. To break even, they need to make $16.50 an hour, which is quite a bit of money when it comes to our regional employers' offerings currently. Mm-hmm. So a high wage job would be in the realm of $18 to $25 an hour, okay. With the projected opportunity to earn more down the road as they increase their expertise, as they increase their credentials, credential holdings, their certificate holdings, and or degree holdings.
Okay, and it's not always about making more by moving up in position, by going from an hourly worker to being management. You want people to be able, who want to stay as an hourly worker, still to be able to move up.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, when I was in manufacturing, we pursued vigorously a cross-functional model so that individuals who came in to entry-level positions would learn each respective job to the point where they could eventually supervise and manage a corporation. So we called ourselves a springboard as a corporation, and the company was called Edge Manufacturing. It's located in Bluffton, Indiana, and we were a springboard for a large number of convicted felons and people who just had made bad choices. They may not have been convicted of felonies, but they made bad choices that wound up costing them from a socioeconomic impact. So we considered ourselves a springboard for those individuals to go back into mainstream society through work. And we expended our own monies to do that. We did not accept public monies. And it was really a thing of beauty, and it's really what caught my interest in terms of workforce development.
I'm going to backtrack to something because you put a figure on the table which I think will surprise people, and you said it like, okay, this is a fact, this is there. For someone to break even, as you put it, their wage needs to be $6.50 an hour. $16.50 an hour. Obviously, there are a number of jobs that have come into this area that don't meet that level. There's a number of them. How, if we know that figure to be correct, how do you think we begin to try to move employers closer to that? Because as we look at upward mobility and workforce development and work has something to do with the economy of the region, we want people to have money to be able to spend, to be able to build things up. How do we get employers closer to that figure?
Sure, great question, Eric. I think one thing is that the market will drive that in and of itself, that competition for employees will drive the wage up eventually. The other thing is that individuals, even though they are on public assistance and they are making roughly $16.50 an hour on public assistance, there are intangibles in the experience of work that they can receive, intangible benefits. One thing that we do is we do career coaching at Eastern Indiana Works. And when we do that, we convey to our clients that work adds value to the human experience, that there are relationships and acquaintances that you make through work. And you may meet someone making $12.50 an hour at a local company who later offers you a job at a much higher wage at another company if that person moves on. So it's the dynamic fluidity of the market that helps individuals in the United States to earn more. It's nothing that I could do. There's no law that Congress can pass. It has to be market driven. And we have to understand that, again, that work adds value to the human existence. And there are a lot of other intangibles that go hand in hand with those future opportunities that appear in people's lives. That's my story. My father didn't graduate from high school. He was laid off constantly. And that's one of the reasons we moved so often. But we always worked. I worked since an early age. So the challenge that we have is that we have now probably 2 or 3 generations consecutively who have never witnessed anyone working. So we are trying to reach those individuals. I call it breaking the code. If we can break the code on unemployability and on addictions, and there is a correlation there to some extent between unemployability and addictions, but if we can break that code and figure out how to reach people through a whole person approach, then we can pump roughly, if we could just employ the 4,000 unemployable individuals in this region, okay, that would result in an economic impact of over $400 million to this region. When you consider they're working, they buy a house, they're buying clothes, they buy food, it would really invigorate our retail sector as well as our housing market. And so we look at the economic impacts that Eastern Indiana Works, and that's what what motivates our team. We are first and foremost about helping people flourish and prosper, as well as the Eastern Indiana region. To flourish and prosper, that's our goal.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're speaking with Mike Rao of Eastern Indiana Works. There's a longer title, and we'll put it up on the screen for you. I'm going to keep going back because hopefully we can have you back at some point in the future, because
Sure.
This is a conversation I'd like to continue, so I'm going to kind of go back on some points. You talked about breaking the code of employability for people. And part of that is obviously there, and you've heard it from political leaders, we need to take the money away from people and force them to work. Mm-hmm. But if, again, going back to your figure of about $1,650 is what somebody needs to break even, how do you, in whatever conversations you have with our political leaders, make them understand that it is a balancing act for some people to be able to step away from what they know, go into something that may not pay them anymore, knowing that they have expenses that they will incur by going to work. Clothes they may have to buy, transportation they'll have to have, child care. How do you, as someone who knows this, have that conversation with our political leaders, and what's the balancing act there that we're looking for so that you can, as you say, break that code?
Sure, and you know, it's an easy conversation because most of our, the vast majority of our elected officials get it. They understand the needs, the human needs that exist. They also understand that workforce development is time intensive. It's a time intensive individual effort with individual people. Everyone has a different story. Everyone has different needs. So that's why workforce development, Speaker Bosma referenced a $1 billion total for workforce development. Well, believe me, Eric, the regional workforce boards in Indiana don't come close to that. They get about 0.02% of that money to work with. The rest of it goes to other areas in Indiana. So we're trying to break that code as well and inform our legislators that regional workforce development boards are uniquely positioned with local leaders who have local unique expertise about the local unique needs of the local unique individuals. So I don't know if I emphasize local unique often enough, but it is a very difficult process from which to accomplish employment with an individual who has, number one, never seen anyone work in their lives. Number two, has child care issues that they need to resolve. Number three, has transportation issues they need to resolve, has health care, you could go on and on.
Right.
So our career counselors break it down piece by piece, and just like breaking any other code, that's the way we're going to accomplish this. But it can't be done with a one-size-fits-all, trickle-down approach from a centralized system. It has to be decentralized to the regions, and then the regions decentralize it to each respective community. I routinely solicit Mayor Snow's input on what is happening in Richmond, for instance. I don't have all the answers, but together we can come up with solutions because there are people who know the problems firsthand and can help us address them.
If the state is spending $1 billion on workforce development, your organization is the only organization truly certified to do workforce development. How is it that you're not seeing the lion's share of that money? Where's the disconnect between what Indianapolis sees, knows, and believes, and your office and the other workforce, you said 12 workforce development boards in Indiana?
Sure. Well, some of that is semantics. You know, it's a matter of opinion as to how you define workforce development. So, in that $1 billion with a B, total, you have higher education, you have secondary education, you have Ivy Tech, you have roughly about $28 to $30 million that is just in a big pot somewhere, and we don't know what happens with that.
That's a lot of money in a pot.
Yeah, it is.
That's an interesting pot.
I'd like to have that pot. And then we know exactly how much each respective workforce development board gets in Indiana, because everything we do is assessed and metriced. And so we have to report our outcomes back to the state and to the federal governments. And so that's how I know how it's broken down. So we just are really trying to educate the public as to who is authorized to do workforce development by the federal government, who is certified to do workforce development by the governor of Indiana, and how little the resourcing is at this point for workforce development. So there's a gentleman named Fred Payne, who's the commissioner of workforce development in Indiana. He is my peer. I don't work for him. That's because the system is rightly decentralized to the regions. So Fred Payne is a great friend of mine. Commissioner Payne is a great friend of mine, and we have these talks a lot about what does the ideal workforce development system look like. And because of my experience in law enforcement, you know, answering calls that people make on 911, and my experience in manufacturing, my experience in economic development, and now workforce development, I am convinced that a decentralized approach gives us the best chance of achieving maximum employment and the best chance to assist people to get out of generational poverty. But if we centralize things, there's always waste in centralization. It's called a bureaucracy, and bureaucracies aren't always, well, I would say bureaucracies are never sensitive to the individual needs. We have caseworkers and career counselors who are boots on the ground with these clients, and they know them very well personally, and so they're able to ask the appropriate questions about whether it comes to addictions or how their public assistance is going, child care, et cetera. So it requires that relationship that is time intensive and built over time in order to get just one individual from unemployability to full employment.
This is Eastern Indiana Works. You cover 9 counties. What is the area that you actually work?
Well, we cover Blackford, Delaware, Henry, Jay, Randolph, Wayne, Union, Fayette, and Rush counties.
Okay.
And I don't think I left anyone out. It's kind of like the guy warned me when I first started working, don't mention names because you're going to forget somebody. I think I got all 9 of them.
I think you got it covered. You all have moved into, I believe, the Excel Center. You've opened up, is it an office in the Excel Center? What was the impetus behind that, and what are you expecting to be able to accomplish by picking that location?
Sure. Well, what we've discovered, Eric, is that a standalone retail-like office for us doesn't work. That we need to co-locate with other organizations that drive traffic into the building. And so in discussions with the Excel Center, we were impressed with their programmatic offerings and the fact that they have a large amount of traffic being driven into their building. And they liked what we offered as well in terms of assistance to their students.
Sure.
And it's just, there's a lot of synergy there because there's commonality between their students and our clients. And so we thought that was a great opportunity for us in Richmond. We are also blessed to have a representative from Eastern Indiana Works in the ICAP office. So Kevin Polovic, the executive director of ICAP in Wayne County, has provided us a cubicle for an individual to work out of. And then when clients come in for public assistance for heating, air conditioning, window repair, et cetera, then his team introduces those clients of his to our professional in his office, and then we're able to connect them with opportunities to skill up or get some career counseling or complete some assessments for employment and really direct them into full employment.
How do you know that you're making a difference? How well do you track your numbers, and who are you reporting your numbers to?
Sure. Well, the truest test is the employment rate, which there are several categories of unemployment. Okay, so what you normally receive in press releases from the state is called the U3 unemployment number. That is not full unemployment. That is an aggregated number. And we drive those numbers out of our offices. So all of the regional workforce boards have unemployment in their central office. So we drive those numbers, but the number that I look at more frequently than the U3 number, which is roughly at, I think nationally today, 3.7% is what I saw today.
Okay.
Which is higher than it has been in the previous 6 months. The other number is the U6, which is roughly in our region between 8 and 9%. So that is real unemployment. That number includes those individuals who have not been employed possibly for their entire lives, that are of working age.
The U6 number you're discussing?
Yes.
Okay.
So I gauge how we're doing partially on the unemployment rate, which is at historic lows. So our team is doing a tremendous job at keeping the unemployment rate low in our region. There are economic forces that are beyond our control that impact that.
Sure.
There could be a downturn. There could be an upswing. We're at the mercy of the global economy like everyone else. But my job is to forecast what the next 6 months holds, and we take it roughly 6 months at a time,
okay,
rather than by quarter, and then plan accordingly. So I saw this increase in unemployment coming 6 months ago.
Caused by what?
Caused by a slowing of construction. You can see the construction numbers, and you see that slowing down. You see home purchases slowing down. And then the RV industry is almost always the bellwether for the economy. Disposable income is a very telling number when it comes to economic health. And when disposable income seems to be decreasing in terms of expenditures, then you can tell people who have immense amounts of or even small amounts of disposable income are not spending, so they see something, and usually it's the big money people and some of the economists that I listen to on an international scale that I kind of get a read, and then I can forecast what we need to do for the next 6 months.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11, talking workforce development this evening, speaking with Mike Rao from Eastern Indiana Works. Thanks for being here with us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Eric.
There are, depending on who you talk to, 300 or more jobs in this area that have gone unfilled or go unfilled. There's a disconnect between, somehow it seems, employers and employees, that some people believe, no, there are no jobs out there, but other people keep saying there are. What's the disconnect from the employer side? What's the disconnect from the potential employee side? Because obviously we have people looking for work. We have employers looking for people. Why are we not able to put those two together?
Sure. Great question. I think part of our role as a workforce development board at Eastern Indiana Works is to bridge that communication gap between employers and job seekers. And so we are constantly trying to improve our messaging. And you've seen my work on social media, which is at best amateurish.
I wouldn't say that.
I'm a complete novice at it, so I probably make a lot of mistakes from a person with your expertise, your perspective. But we are
I hire people.
We're trying to find every niche we can to bridge that communications gap, because I still hear that there aren't any jobs available. I don't know if they mean that there aren't jobs that pay a satisfactory wage, or if they really believe there are no jobs available. So I ask them point blank, and then try to figure out how we can better communicate the fact that there are 300 job openings, roughly, and in the
that
area.
number really has not changed. I mean, that's been a number that has been there for the last year and a half.
Yes.
I've been hearing that same number that long.
Yes. And the bottom line, in my opinion, is that we don't have a workforce problem. We have a population problem. If you look at our demographics, and at Eastern Indiana Works worked closely with Jeff Plaster on the Eastern Indiana Transforms project that just recently was presented in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. And we ran the burning glass numbers for that project, which is the highest level of data that you can find on demographics.
Sorry, the burning glass numbers. I have to say I'm not familiar with that term, so I'm going to stop you and ask you to.
Burning glass is a database, very expensive database, okay, which is why not many people use it. Okay. But it is the highest level of data that you can find. And the key to data is to understand the lag time, because the unemployment numbers that you receive and that you report on, there's a lag time there. So I'm looking ahead of the lag time rather than looking at the actual number to try to figure out what is real unemployment. And so our region suffers from a population problem. Low birth rate, high number of great citizens passing away, not being replaced, very little residential transition into the region, and so our economic developers and our elected officials have wisely partnered, and that's what with this Eastern Indiana Transforms project was that Jeff Plaster headed up. That was a focus of that project was, okay, how do we partner? Bottom line is we need each other. Okay, so we can have the sports rivalries and all that. That's great, but we need each other because economics is regional. It is not just specific to a community. We have to look outside our communities and figure it out with our regional partners. How are we all going to put ourselves in the best position to flourish and prosper? And so, so that is the key to solving the lack of job seekers. It's to solve the population dilemma.
If the population changes and the wages of the jobs don't change, and I know that you said that the market will take care of that, but if there's people still not taking these jobs and we still have people unemployed because they don't believe it's a job worth taking, again, how do we convince one or the other that they're right or wrong, or can you? I mean, how do you convince somebody to take this job if they believe that this job is not going to pay them enough to do what they need to do?
Yeah, I think one of the better public policies that achieved that somewhat was the Welfare to Work initiative that emerged during the Clinton administration, and it was a bipartisan bill. But we need to gradually motivate individuals to come off of public assistance. And the phrase that I like to use is become the CEO of your future. You know, you want to be you think it's easy to be a CEO? Let's do it. You know, you become the CEO of your future, and then you make the decisions that you might work a job in a plastic fabber company. Sorry, that's a slang term. Plastic fabrication company for 3 or 4 years, and then develop the expertise to launch your own company or to launch a subsidiary to that plastic fabrication. I'm using that as an example.
Sure.
But, the owner of Edge Manufacturing, that's what he did. He did not thrive in high school. He graduated, but probably not very high on the graduation list, GPA list. But he learned in a CTE program, and I want to make a pitch for Rusty Hensley and all the others who are doing such a great job in CTE. That everything he learned in CTE, he put to work as an entrepreneur. So the skills he developed, did he work menial jobs? Yes. Have I worked menial jobs? You better believe it. We all have.
We all have.
So it's what you learn during that process that is an intangible, unique value to yourself, and you can become the CEO of your own destiny. Become an entrepreneur, learn skills. And once I figured that out, it became fun for me. Otherwise, digging a ditch in West Virginia in the summer is not a lot of fun. It's pretty humid there and hilly. So I was the wheelbarrow guy and the ditch digger. And so you're going up and down the hills all day long. And I thought, you know, I probably don't want to do this the rest of my life. So what can I do? What can I learn to gain control over my own employment destiny? So that's the message we're trying to say. In addition to a population problem, we have a messaging problem. Our pop culture denigrates work. Everyone who works is an idiot in the pop culture. You got to get over on the man, and you got to figure out how to win the lottery, or you got to hit it rich on horse racing, or whatever it is. And that's not the way the truly wealthy individuals achieve their wealth, in all honesty. You read their histories. They worked for it, and they learned skills, and then they leveraged those skills.
You talked about Rusty Hensley.
Yes.
The Richmond's career education. There are, in this area, 3 career tech places: Newcastle, Connersville,
Yes.
Richmond. How closely does your office or your offices work with those organizations and to inform what it is they're teaching and how they're teaching skills to our young kids?
Sure. We are in very close contact with all. Chris Lamb from the Newcastle Career Center, he's on our board of directors. We always have a CTE leader on our board that lends expertise from that area because it's so crucial to our future in workforce development.
The manufacturing, I hear, has changed through the years. Is that message reaching people the way that it needs to? Because everybody says, if we just got one good manufacturer in here, all of our problems would be solved. I hear other people go, that's not true, because manufacturing now is not what manufacturing was. And if you needed 1,500 people before, you're only going to need 300 or 400 people now. Do we understand, as we grew up in the manufacturing area, for those who did grow up here with that manufacturing, that it's not the same as it was, and one big manufacturer does not really solve those problems, and the skill sets that are needed are different?
Yeah, I think you make a great point. We have a lot of work to do to help people understand that this is the age of additive manufacturing. It's not even, this is additive manufacturing.
Define that.
Additive manufacturing integrates new emerging technologies like 3 and 4D printing. We're not far from a day when you will be able to print your own tool at home. Let's say you need a hammer or whatever, and the handle on your hammer is broken. You'll be able to 3D print your own hammer at home. But
wow, you just upset the folks at Craftsman.
Yeah. It's
what are you saying?
It's going to be there are individuals who are 3D and 4D printing cars right now.
Cars,
yes,
C-A-R-S.
Yes.
On the road.
Yes. Fully drivable. And it's a matter of taking the design technology like Solid Edge or one of those packages, creating the design, connecting it to a 3D printer that has the elements available, and it just kind of creates the parts, and then you put the parts together and you have your car. And so it's an amazing time to learn new skills. And you're right, manufacturing won't look like it did when my father was working in it. He was at PC here for several years, and it was a large full-time employment footprint. I think that you will see, and again, this is the postmodern age too. So postmodernity is fragmented. It is focused on speed and expeditious responses, fluidity. That's what manufacturing is going to look like. And so as the global economy, the demand in the global economy increases in all kinds of ways, entrepreneurs who can figure out how to meet demand in an expeditious manner through additive manufacturing will do very well financially. And so that's what we tell our clients. If you have the imagination and the drive, this is the greatest nation in the history of the world. If you can't make it here, how do you think you're going to fare in Russia or China? Not very well. This is the greatest place in the history of the world. So why not grasp your opportunity and fulfill your destiny? You can control it in America if you want to work hard enough.
As you look at and work with people looking to enter the job pool or change jobs within that pool, how is that expressed to them so that they understand that it's not, okay, I'm going to get this job and this is where I'm going to be? How is that expressed that, yeah, you're going to get this job, but you're going to retool, you're going to continue to retool, you're going to continue to train, you're going to continue to work? That's not for a long time what people were used to. You were able to go into a job and just kind of do that job. Yeah, you changed a little bit, but now you're saying every few years it's back to class, it's relearning, it's,
Yes.
is that an understood, as you work with people, is that an understood piece of being employed these days?
Yes, we try to convey that through our career counselors and our case managers and everyone. Everyone in our corporation conveys that to our clients, that be prepared for the most exciting time of your life, because you're not just going to prosper, you're going to flourish. You know, you're going to flourish intellectually, you're going to be challenged. Far better than sitting and watching daytime TV. You know, I had to watch some of it yesterday. I was at a doctor's office and I was ready to throw it. If I had a brick, I would have thrown it to the screen. But it was the only channel they had on there. So I'm sitting in the waiting room going, oh no, can I wait outside, please? But the excitement that takes place when people are learning and flourishing and prospering, and then they pass it on to the next generation, that's always been part of the American ethos. And our organization is committed to making sure that people understand that, you know, with all this freedom and prosperity and opportunity, there is responsibility to pass it on. So I've talked to particularly different daycare providers. How do we implement this kind of thinking into daycares? Craig Kenyon is a big proponent of counseling. I'm going to ruin the medical term, but pregnant mothers, about how you educate your child. How do you prepare your child to flourish and prosper? He's really the person that got that planted the ideas in my mind and helped me to think about it more thoroughly and deeply. This is an exciting time to be in workforce development. And the Regional Workforce Board, in addition to being the only authorized, certified organization to do workforce, you know, as I've said before, and I'll say it a million times, sorry.
Go for it.
Many people talk about workforce development. We are actually authorized and certified to do it. So we are committed as a not-for-profit corporation to seeing this region flourish and prosper, because the individuals who live here flourish and prosper. And we believe the best days are ahead of us. And we just need to understand that we have a population problem and that we have a messaging problem. And we're up against a juggernaut in the popular culture that constantly barrages our people with bad messaging about when it comes to work. You know, work is for idiots, work is for people who can't get over on the system. And, you know, I was thankful for wealthy people when I was young and very poor, because they gave me a job. So thank God for wealthy people.
It's interesting to hear you talk about, to a certain extent, early childhood development as part of a workforce development idea. I mentioned to you when I saw you that this was a day of meetings. I ran from one to the first one this morning. There was a lot of conversation about early childhood development and being able to get to young people, very, very young people, from you know, birth to 3 or 4 years old in pre-K. So to hear that workforce development is a conversation being had around that time frame right now, that's interesting in changing people's mindsets.
Yeah, I think it's a key component of our strategy. And we don't want a Huxley-like Brave New World, okay, where people are just, okay, when you're born, you're going to be a drone that puts a widget on a thingamajig. That's not what we want. What we want to do is convince our young people that work adds unique value to their human experience, that there's a lot of value there. And it's fun. It's fun to meet new people. to engage them in team settings to solve a problem. And I think our schools have implemented that approach to a large extent as well.
We've got about 9 minutes left, and we'll be done. I want you to talk a little bit about, and we hear it a lot when we hear economic development and workforce, work keys testing. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about exactly what that is and how employers use that in the hiring process, and how it can, or if it can, for people who haven't been employed or don't understand the changes that have taken place, how they can use that in taking that test to figure out where they actually fit in the workplace right now?
Sure. Work keys testing is one tool that an employer can choose to utilize as a pre-employment screening process within its pre-employment screening process.
Are there certain sectors that use it more than others?
It is actually diminishing in demand. We've found that.
Okay.
And one of the issues that we've run into, if a company establishes a rigid policy that says you must pass all components of the work keys assessment before you're employed at our company, then you're finding that people who don't pass, which is a significant number, stop applying for that company. So they'll go through the work keys assessment once, and if they don't pass all of the components of the assessment, then they're not hired, and they have what we call assessment aversion, a fear of failure, and so they stop their application process with that company, and then they're hired by someone else. So it's a blessing and a curse, depending on how the company uses it. If the company does not have a rigid, you must pass every component of work keys before you're hired here, policy, then it can work. So that individuals who may pass, a couple of components, but need to do a remedial assessment for another component, if they're given that opportunity while they're being employed, then they'll hang in there and they'll accept the position and pursue that completion of that assessment. But if it's a very rigid approach, we're finding that the applicants are leaving, the job seekers are leaving the field and saying, I don't want to fail anymore. I've failed enough in my life. So they transition into another place of employment after that. So it's an assessment. We also have Prove It, which employers are utilizing more and more in the region. Prove It is an online assessment tool that the employers can administer, and so there's no middle organization involved in the assessment. It's just the employer and the job applicant, and so a lot of employers are exploring that option.
Did we get most of your messaging, Ian?
We certainly did.
Mike,
I am so grateful to you.
Thank you very much for spending some time with us. I really do appreciate you taking the time to come in and talk about this, and hopefully we can connect again and continue to discuss some things about workforce development as a conversation that just always continues and continues and continues and continues and continues to change. So hopefully you can keep me up to date when I say things wrong, which is a fair amount probably.
No, it's a rare occasion, Eric, since I've known you.
Mike, thanks.
Thank you, Eric. God bless you.
Thank you. I want to remind you of a couple of things taking place in our community. This, of course, is still the holiday season, so there is plenty going on. I want to remind you, first of all, that if your not-for-profit organization has an event that you want us to try to get on our community bulletin board, let us know about it at least a couple of weeks ahead of time. You can send us a flyer about your event to wctv@iue.edu. Send it at least 2 weeks ahead of time. We'll be happy to get it on, and there is no charge for that service for our not-for-profit organizations or for our education bulletin board either. The Richmond Police Department is doing some hiring, so if you're interested in being a police officer, been thinking about it, know someone who's thinking about it, now is the time. Test dates are available through January 4th. If you need more information, contact Major Bales. The information there is on the screen. Morrison Reeves Library has Firefly Fridays at 10 a.m. on December 14th and January 11th. Sing, talk, paint, just really have a good time for ages 0 through 5 years. If you need more information, mrlinfo.org. Families in the Forest is an event taking place at Cope Environmental Center. They've been having a number of these. Owls is taking place on Saturday, December 15th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Of course, Cope Environmental Center is on Airport Road, copeenvironmental.org for more information on that. It's the holiday season. It's the Christmas concert and sing-along at Indiana University East Richmond Chorale taking place. Haven't heard them perform? Should be good. Saturday, December 15th, 1 p.m. in Lingle Auditorium. That'll help you get into the holiday spirit at Reed Health. Meet and mingle with St. Nick. Oh boy, I can tell him what I want. It's gonna be big. It's got 4 wheels. Saturday, December 15th, 1 to 4, in the community room at the Wayne County Historical Museum. Take a photo with Santa, free games, crafts, treats, story time with Santa at 2 and 3 p.m., Gingerbread House Awards at 3:30, WayneCountyHistoricalMuseum.org for more information than that. I am going to be taking serious advantage of this one. If you're like me and you're not crazy about gift wrapping or you keep getting wrapped up in tape, Stage 1 is having a fundraiser, a gift wrapping fundraiser on Saturday the 15th and the 22nd from 2 to 5 p.m., Richmond Civic Theater. It's in the theater annex located behind the theater on 10th Street. So save yourself some time with that. The RSO Singers, if you haven't heard them, you'll enjoy a December concert from them at Christ United Church, 3430 Backmeyer Road on the 16th at 7 p.m. There is no charge for that event. A Chip and Clip takes place at Help the Animals the third Saturday of each month from 11 a.m. to noon at the shelter, which is at 2101 West Main Street. Hayes Arboretum has a number of activities coming up. You can see those on the screen, December 22nd and 21st and 22nd, and into January, a number of things going on there. And express enrollment taking place at Ivy Tech Community College into January 2nd, Wednesday, January 2nd through the 5th. If you're planning on attending Ivy Tech Community College, that is a great time to get that information from them and to keep yourself updated. Thank you very much for watching this edition of In Focus. Replays of this program will begin at 10:30 tonight, also tomorrow at 8 p.m., Saturday 8 a.m. and 9 p.m., Sunday at 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. And audio of this program can be heard on G1013 and ESPN Radio 100.9, 6 a.m. on Sunday morning. So again, thank you to Mike Rao for being here. Thank you very much for watching this edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh. Have yourself a great weekend.